I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have a special guest with me today. We're going to talk about how him and his team went from 0 to 2.5 million in 2 years. We're going to talk about some of the things that he was doing before he made the jump into his own company. And we're going to talk about some of the things that it takes to be a highly productive, big billing recruiter. And to top that off, we're going to talk about some of the things that he's doing, building a successful team. So I am so excited to have Mike Williams on as a podcast guest today. Welcome to the episode, Mike.
Thanks, Ben. Good to be here.
So real quick, before we get started, Mike, can you share a little bit about you before we do a deep dive on your background?
Yes. So Mike Williams, the name of our company is called Carnegie Search. We're based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're a team of 4 people. The company is 2 years old this month, actually. Which is
Congrats.
And so what we do is we place people into the manufacturing sector. So specifically, it's engineers, or what we call operations leadership people, like think of a plant manager, factory manager type person, or an engineer who is designing a product or designing a manufacturing process.
Awesome. So before we start figuring out the secrets of everything that you've done and all the successes you have, how did you even end up in this wonderful world of recruiting?
Yeah, I feel so fortunate really every day to be in recruiting because I love it. And I ended up in recruiting. I'd always been in sales. In college, my job was in a call center, calling on alumni, asking them for donations. So I got exposed to, high volume cold calling from a young age. And then after that, I took kind of the first job that I could find after school. I went to school for English, so I had very little commercial viability. So I ended up in sales after school. I was selling insurance-esque type product. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. And then I was just ready for the next thing. And the funny thing was the way I found that first job was through a recruiting agency who was then hiring for a full desk recruiter. So I was kind of aware of who the company was and liked them and took that job and was off to the races.
That is funny. Talk about full circle. So you actually worked with a recruiting firm that found you a job right outside of college.
Yeah. So I went into 5 recruiting agencies because I couldn't find a job. I just walked in and with my resume in my hand, and 3 or 4 of them tried to put me in a job of a machine operator, forklift driver kind of guy. I probably wouldn't have done very well in that. And then so the first white collar type job that I got offered was this insurance-y company. And yeah, that was how it happened.
So, okay, so you made the jump. You decided to become a recruiter. What did that look like? A whole new world, or was this something that you were really looking forward to?
Well, everyone in my family told me not to do it. Which emboldened me to just want to do it more. But it was a 100% commission job. It was a draw on commission. And so family members were not really thinking that was a good option. But I just really, right from the beginning, it made sense to me. Because in comparison to the insurance thing I was selling, I was cold calling people and having to explain, what is this type of insurance? Why should you want it? What is the pain point that you're feeling? They don't even know or care, right? So it's hard. It was a hard thing to sell. And then compare that with, hey, I'm a recruiter. I literally see the job posting that you have on Indeed. It's been up for 90 days. And I have the perfect candidate right here. Why wouldn't you want to talk to them? It just made a lot more sense. It was an easier sell. So I believed in it right from the bat. And I enjoyed it right off the bat and just found it fun.
That is awesome. So you became a top biller and a big biller while you were there. Was that self-taught? Was it trained? Was the onboarding perfect? How did you even get to becoming a top biller within your first role so quick?
It was, well, I can't say I got a ton of great training, but sometimes I think in your career or in life in general, it's the hard things that happen that really makes you great. Everyone responds to it different, right? So some people go in and they get no training and they just give up. This isn't for me. There's no way I could possibly do this. Other people go in and it's like a challenge. And it's like, because it's so hard in the beginning, you learn faster and you have to sink or swim. So that was kind of my experience. What happened to me was I got hired into a branch that had never done direct hire before. It was a big company, but they were mostly a contract company in general. And this particular location was 100% contract forever. So it was cold as ice. It couldn't have been colder. There was no house accounts to get, right? And then there was no other, it wasn't like there was another big biller in that office. It was like, hey, Mike, you can recruit for my jobs. It was day one. There are no clients. There are no candidates. The equivalent of like, here's a phone book and here's a cell phone. Let's see what you can do, kid. So I liked it though, because that meant it aligned well with me, because then I could write my own ticket. You know, I could do everything my own way. I didn't have anyone really breathing down my neck saying, do this or do that. So to me, it actually turned out to sort of be a blessing. And then later on, when I started my own company, I had faith that I could do it because I had done it once before. I had turned a zero office into a high producing desk. So, you know, when I first started a company, I'll tell you this quick story. So it was before I even had an office. I was upstairs in our house and I had no clients. I had no candidates. I moved to Charlotte. I didn't know anyone here. So I started making cold calls upstairs and I'm loud on the phone, you know, hi, I'm Mike, I'm a recruiter. Just wanted to see if you'd be open to talk to this candidate. And I did that for 3 days and no one was calling back, right? So it's brand new. And I remember going downstairs. It was the third day and my wife was downstairs and she goes, you are making me nervous. You have been pounding the phones for 3 days and no one's calling you back. She's like, I don't know if this is going to work out for you. But my point is, because I had started in a desk where there was nothing, I knew it's like, you just got to keep doing it. 3 days ain't going to do it. So keep calling and, people will call you back.
That is awesome. So you became a top biller there, and you were there for multiple years. President's Club, if I remember, like 5 times. Like you really just hit it out of the park. What made you start looking for a change?
Yeah, it's a big decision to quit your job, start your own business. There is a lot of incentive to not do it. You already have clients, you already have candidates. You can kind of go on autopilot if you want to. And there's never a good time to do it either, because I had a lot of accounts receivable waiting for me if I see. In fact, in my last month, I billed over $100,000 a month, which I think is a good month by anyone's metric, right? And so I didn't get any of that commission money because I quit. And so, you get paid when the fees pay. So, and there was money coming in from previous months too. So it's a big decision financially.
So you literally walked away from maybe like 50 to 100K in commission.
Or just that last month would have been close to 50. And then, from whatever was in the month, it was probably close to 100K I would have made total.
And like, you're sitting there, you're looking at this money and you're like, hey, should I make the jump now or should I do it? And let's talk about like you making the jump, but like in that moment, like, was there like a little guy on your shoulder saying like, should I stay here a little while longer?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, because I've seen other recruiters do this, they'll just put their feet up for the last month or two and then quit. That wasn't really for me. And I wanted to leave on good terms. I did my best to like work hard until the day that I left. It wasn't my fault. I billed 100 in the last month. Like it just that the deal's closed. Yeah, there was a little bit of like, should I do this? It's nerve-wracking to go from a sure thing of a career to starting your own business. But the reason that I did it was because, so I was 5 or 6 years into being a recruiter. I'd done President's Clubs. I'd made money. And I'd learned something about myself in that time, which was money is great to have, but it wasn't really like winding my clock every day. It wasn't like, I'm not a fancy person. I don't have a fancy car. I don't, care about that stuff. what really motivated me to wake up every day, pound the phones, and want to keep going in this job is I wanted to see how good could I be at recruiting. I really, really wanted to try to be amongst the best in the world at recruiting. It was just a competitiveness and just also feeling like a bit of a calling. Like this is what I think I was kind of put here to do. So let's not half-ass it. Let's see, like, how good can you actually be? So after 5 years with my last company, the thing was we weren't building anything there. So I never had the chance to build a team, really. It was just me. I was a solo, full desk. Every deal was a 360 deal.
Okay.
And I wanted to build something that was, other people and something highly niched, because the company I came from was a huge company. I happened to be the manufacturing guy, but I wanted to get my hands around our branding, our niche, who we are, what we believe in, what our values are. And it's really hard to do that as part of someone else's infrastructure.
Okay. Before we start talking about kind of like some of the things that you did, like to make that jump, could there have been anything they could have done to keep you?
That's a great question, because this is what I ask myself for my own people now. I don't want to lose my best recruiters, and it is hard because at some point you might say to yourself, I don't know if I need the company anymore to do this. So although you might not need the company, maybe you would want the company. And that's what I'm trying to build here. Something that's fun, that's exciting, that people feel like I'm genuinely contributing to their individual growth. So I don't know what that will look like. It's person to person, right? Some people, their growth is like, I'm billing a ton. I just want to take 6 weeks vacation and work from home. And if you show me that you're billing over 500,000 for a few years in a row, then I'm open to, hey, you want to take your foot off of the gas a bit, then you've proven yourself to me. It's not going to happen in the first year or two, or maybe 3. Like, you kind of have to come in and hone your craft and show me that you truly are elite at this. But over time, we can work towards that. Other people, it's like, I just want to get better and better and better. I want to lead a team. So it could be like, hey, today you're a top biller. Tomorrow you're a billing manager. The next day you're managing director. The next day you're on a partner track. And you're cut into the profits of the company in some way. Maybe it's you're going to go open a new branch for us. So what I focus on is, as long as I'm, diligent about making myself better every day, I can then pull them to their next level. I can't get them any further than I've already been, right? I can't train someone how to be better than I already am. So I just focus on doing my thing, trying to be the best that I can be, and trying to be really attuned to what do you need on your path. So to answer your question directly, that was never really discussed with me. Okay. Where I was. It wasn't like, what's next for you, Mike? It was like, another big month. Great job. Let's get another month next month. And after 5 years of that, you're like, what am I going to do this for 10 years, 15, 20? I mean, at some point, it's just, you're on the hamster wheel.
So jumping back to your story, and I find this super interesting. So you were recruiting up in the Northeast, but now you're in the amazing city of Charlotte. How did that happen?
Very deliberately. So, and this is something that I would attribute to a lot of our success, especially our early success, is so it's great to have great tactical ability. If you have good tonality on the phone, you know how to overcome an objection, you know how to take a job order, you know what kind of candidate they need, you got to have those things, right? But what a lot of people don't think about in this business is your strategy. And coming to Charlotte was a very strategic decision for me. So I was recruiting in Western Massachusetts just because that's where I grew up. And it was not a particularly desirable territory. It is, we're not talking about the mecca of industry here. It's 2 hours west of Boston and an hour-ish north of Hartford. So it is a rural town. So what I did was I said, if I'm going to quit my job, start my own business, now is the time to pick what is the hottest market in the hottest niche that is going to really give me the best chance to be successful here. So every day after work, what I would do is I had a big spreadsheet and I had columns going of what areas of the country have the most population growth, population density, lowest crime rate. I was looking into manufacturing activity, who's opening up plants, who's closing down plants, because I have pretty much decided I wanted to be manufacturing engineer and recruiter again. I went and visited multiple cities. Me and my wife went to Austin, Texas, because at the time that was a very hot city. Tesla was going there, and it was this is around the pandemic time. So we went there, didn't really love it. Wasn't totally for us. It was also a little far from home. We looked at some places in Florida that had very good numbers as far as economic growth, but Charlotte was really, really, really hard to beat. I mean, they were strong in every category, and we came here. We immediately loved it. It felt like home for us. And it also checked the box of where am I going to be happy, which is hard to have a quantitative, you can't, assign a metric to that, right? But it's really important, especially when you're a solopreneur type person. If you go somewhere where you're miserable, I don't care how good the numbers are, you're not going to perform every day. So yeah, it was a strategic decision, but because we picked such a hot market, we were able to hit the ground running and build big numbers. Really, even as soon as our first month, we were billing when I came down here.
That is awesome. And I know you are huge for like in-person meetings. And when it comes down to if you were still trying to, hit the Charlotte market, but still live in like, the Northeast, that'd be a little tough.
Yeah. Especially when you're brand new. So it gives you the ability to go out and see a lot of different companies because there's so many of them here. So, we try to do that as much as we can.
And I think that's one thing that I think a lot of recruiters, and I'll just say this, including myself, we've taken such advantage of this virtual world that the conversations I'm having with like people like you and other recruiters that are billing great numbers, I think clients are like looking for that in-person stuff now.
I think so. I think if you can so I think it's harder to get the in-person meeting than it has been because of this. But if you can get it, it's a huge competitive advantage. So much has changed in the last 5 years, right? I mean, especially in recruiting. I remember being a new recruiter, and it was like you go out almost every night. Like you go out to a bar, restaurant, whatever. Your manager's going out every night. I mean, no one on my team goes out after work anymore. Like everyone goes home, and I have a young team, like people in their early 20s, and it's like they're just not into that. And companies and clients are the same way. It's harder to get a visit going or a dinner after work or even a lunch. But I think that if you can get it, people seem to respond to it.
Awesome. So going back to this jump, the start of your company, you strategically built out this Excel spreadsheet, massive data. You went and visited all these cities, which is super smart. I think that's something that a lot of recruiters don't even think about doing. And if you want a good laugh, like I spent 2 years planning on moving to Washington, D.C. because that's the epicenter of government contracting. So absolutely love that. But did you have any challenges when you made that jump, you left the firm and made that jump to your own company?
There's a lot of challenges. There's, the self-doubt of, am I this guy or not? And another thing is tough is you go from going into an office every day with a company and a break room and insurance, everything that comes along with being an employee to being, an whatever you want to call it, like a business owner, even though it's very unglamorous. It's literally you in the spare room of your house making calls into the ether and someone not answering, and like you close a deal and there's no bell to ring or like high five, you're like high fiving the air, like close the deal. So you go downstairs at the end of the day, your wife comes home from work, she's had a busy day, you're like, honey, I closed the deal. She's like, great, what are you making for dinner? Like, and it's not, but I mean, obviously she was supportive and everything, but like no one really gets it. It's really an isolating experience in your first year. It's just you, and the hard days are harder and the fun days are a little less fun. But I mean, I remember there was a time I was having a tough week in the first year. I think I blanked that month. So I had 1 month where I had a 0, and you start to, question everything. I remember being on the phone with my father-in-law and was like, I don't know, everything's changing. We don't know anyone here, and it's like so hard, and it's just a lot of change at once is like kind of the tough part of it. Like, you're in a new city, you don't know anyone. Other thing that's tough is like, this was all my decision. Like, my wife's dream at the time was like, let's buy the house next to my parents' house, have babies, and like we can like use them for like babysitters. And that just wasn't my dream. And so we talked and we ended up agreeing like this would be what was best for both of us. But it was kind of a sacrifice for her to come down here. And so that was hard too, you know, because you have to be on the same page. And so, yeah, there are hard times, but it's worth it.
Awesome. Now, was it your first year on your own? You built, what was it, 900,000, if I remember right?
In there, yeah, yep.
So you first year in business, you built 900,000. Like, how did you even do that?
We got fortunate in some ways. We worked really hard too. So both of those things go hand in hand. What I learned over time is we benefited a lot from the niche that we picked and the level of role within that niche. So what I mean by that is manufacturing was pretty hot, especially in and around Charlotte. But beyond that, I picked to recruit for really individual contributor engineers and first line managers, which is not the sexiest choice. We're not an executive search where we're replacing the vice president of engineering for a $90,000 or $100,000 fee. And a lot of recruiters want to be in that world. We are having an average fee of like $25,000, which means we have to do a high volume. And so we, you know, in my first year, I was doing like 4 and 5 deals a month. And then you end up with more follow-ups and you end up with more onboarding and EQC, you know, quality, everything you have to do more of. But the big advantage is there's a huge amount of repeatability in that level of search. So rather than placing a CFO where they place it with you once, hopefully that guy's there for years. In this case, if I place a manufacturing engineer for a $22,000 fee, he's joining a team of probably 10 other manufacturing engineers at that company. And someone's always coming, going, quitting, retiring, getting promoted, and then they'll come back to you to place the next one. And that was really been a huge key of our success for getting started so quickly.
So because you've been so successful in that space, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of your clients tried giving you more business outside of your niche. How do you handle that?
Yeah, really good question. Because that was a huge inflection point for us. Because when I first started, you kind of be crazy to turn down work. But after 3, 4, 5 months of billing consistently, you really have to specialize. And I remember specifically one conversation with a new client who did just this. You placed it was some type of engineer, I can't remember what, and it was like, hey, now could you find me a tax accountant next? And I remember being on the phone with him. I remember right where I was during that conversation. And it went through my mind. I could say, yes, I kind of need the work. And I instinctively said, you know what? It's just not our area. I don't think it's for me. I could try. I think I might be able to find it, but I'm going to have to say no because I want to be specific and true to our niche. That guy called me a few weeks later. He was like, you are one of the only recruiters who's ever turned down work from me. And he's like, that was just so, you know, he respected it, I should say, right? So he just respected that. And he's like, now we're going to give you all of our engineering searches. Because everyone, you know, is just looking for the next job and they lie. And, oh, we're a specialist in this. Oh, we're specialized in that too. Whatever it is you need, we'll specialize in it. But he appreciated it. And I think our clients have come to appreciate it. And actually, counterintuitively, you get more work in the end because they will give you the searches that you're a good fit for.
That's powerful right there. Like you're 100% right. Most companies or most recruiters are like, but it's business, and it's right there. They're ready to sign the paperwork, and I could start. But there's just one of those things. What I've seen in a lot of the top billers is the ability to say no.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's searches outside your niche. It's also, if it's bad contract terms, I mean, we're not going to ever do a search less than 20%, and we really try to do them for 25. If there's a huge amount of repeatability and volume, then, we're not going to be legalistic and be like, oh, it's 25 or nothing if you're going to give us 15 orders, right? And it's like quick payment terms, or if it's a shorter guarantee or something, there's always some way that we can make it work. But yeah, you got to be able to say no. I learned that relatively early on because I had a client that was not that all of their jobs didn't pay very much. They didn't have a very good fee percentage with us. I was doing deals with them, but they were really low total fee when we would close them. And whenever I walked away from them, my whole billings went up simply because I wasn't wasting my time. I was on the phones trying to get the next client who had way better terms. And so, yeah, I completely agree with that.
That is awesome. So build 900K, first year, out of the gate, strategic, awesome, worked your ass off. When did you decide and how did you decide that you needed to grow the team or help to grow?
It was always the goal. That was my vision when I first started the company. I never wanted to be just the guy who has the lifestyle business, bill a lot, go on a bunch of vacations. And I love the work. And it was important to me to find people who reminded me sort of myself when I first started recruiting, which was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young, wanted to work hard, wanted to make money, no idea where to put that energy into in order to make those things happen. Just, flapping in the breeze. And it was like, I'm here, I'm ready to work, but I don't know what the work is. So it just makes me feel really good to find people like that who are recently out of college and say, like, I'm going to help you to put that energy into something that will help you make money, be a source of good in this world where you're helping people find prosperity in their careers. You're helping companies that are good companies to grow. And yeah, you're helping me too, because we're growing this business and we're going to put this money into finding the next person who needs that help. I was telling our team the other day, what we're trying to do here is build a business that sustains, that maybe a decade from now, when we're in 2034, a kid who is just graduating from college, no idea what to do in their life, finds our company, and we can turn them into a top biller within a couple of years. That's awesome that we could be there to help that person if we keep working really hard now. So the short story is that was always my goal. That was why I wanted to do this business, was to grow something that I was proud of, that was a business that would last. How did I know in the moment that it was time? There was a couple things happened. One, I was clearly not able to keep up with the amount of work we had coming. So it was kind of obvious in a way that we needed help. And then the second thing that happened was just through sort of serendipity, I was introduced to my first employee, Isaac, who was a friend of a friend. And the friend said, you really should meet this kid. He's about to graduate. I've known him since he was a little kid, and I think he's going to be a sales guy someday. So I took him out to lunch. I knew right off the bat the kid had talent. He was going to be great at something. And so it was a no-brainer. As I got to know him, I was like, this is a recruiter. This is a top billing recruiter. This kid has what it takes. So it made me feel a lot better about taking the plunge and hiring the first one, because I was pretty sure I had a tiger by the tail. And he is 13 months in with me and has been nothing but an absolute beast on the phones. And it has been killing it right from the beginning.
Well, okay. So I think this is one of the challenges a lot of high performing recruiters have, is they're really good at recruiting, but not always the best at transferring that knowledge and training on onboarding and all that stuff. How did you set him up to be successful? So I have to be honest, I had to sort of wing it. I hadn't done this a bunch before. But what I said to myself was, this is what I'm going to do is we're going to sit right next to each other in person, obviously, and you're going to just listen to every call that I make. And
I was in a good position because I had just had some big months teed up. There was money in the bank through the company. I wasn't spending the money really that came in. I was saving it so that way we could hire people. And I said, I don't need to have my best month ever your first month. It's like we can kind of sit down and work together and train. I didn't let the wheels totally fall off the thing. Like I'm taking client calls and trying to build the best I can. But I also was really focused on training him. So what we did was I said, we're going to set up a training model that looks like this. At first, you're just going to do what we call flips. Then you're going to do what we call splits. Then you're going to do what we call 360. What that means is a flip would be, I just had to on the phone making 80 to 100 calls a day saying this. Hi, my name's Isaac. I'm a recruiter. I see that you're a mechanical engineer. I have a mechanical engineering job open in Charlotte. Would you be open to talk to my boss, Mike Williams, about this opportunity? And you can train someone who has drive to be able to make that call. Like it's just dialing the numbers, right? And then saying that. And if they say maybe, but what's the job about? We started to train, it's this aerospace company. It pays whatever. It's located nearby. Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, when can Mike talk? So that's what he did for the first couple months. Then after doing that and hearing me do the next stage where I would tell him about the opportunity, what does it pay, whatever, probably took a month. And then I said, I think that you can just start doing the full candidate side. And if you get stumped, just ask me afterwards or flip to me anyway. If they really stump you, just be like, all right, we're going to get you. So then he started doing just the candidate side. And that took probably 6 or 8 months where that was all he did was he would call candidates, he would recruit, but he wasn't doing any sales. Okay. Then I was getting ready for him to do sales and I could tell that he was having the aptitude to be able to do it. And he kind of got lucky. He called in his eagerness to do a good job. He was calling for a sales engineer job, someone that probably had like 3 years experience in sales. And he called the vice president of a company and asked him if he wanted to be a sales engineer. The vice president took mercy on him and said, Isaac, I love your enthusiasm here, but I have a team of like 45 sales engineers under me, so I don't think I'm going to probably be taking 8 steps backwards. But we're hiring here too. So if you want, then you can recruit for us. So he picked up a client through sheer dumb luck, but then it was off to the races with him and the client side.
The sheer dumb luck is also the amount of calls that he was making before that too. So, but man, that is awesome.
Yeah, true story. And turned out to be a pretty good client for him. Placed a few people there. So
fantabulous. So you now have a team of 4. Like you had your first hire. Like how did you get to the next 2 hires? Like what happened with the company? Where'd you go? How'd you do that?
So me and Isaac doing our thing for 6-8 months or so. And it was actually motivating for me because I had told him from the beginning, we're going to build something here that hopefully we can all be proud of. Like, we want to get to 100 recruiters. We want to build something that sustains and lasts. And especially when, he's considering after college joining my company that is just me. It's like, we're not joining, SpaceX here. I mean, this is a dude in the spare room of his house making freaking cold calls. You need to share that stuff with people, right? It's like, it's not going to just be like, hey, you're going to also work in my garage. Or I didn't think that was super compelling. I wanted to share a vision with him. Like, Isaac, come in, be the first one in the door, work really hard. 3-5 years from now, we're going to have 20 people with us, and you're going to have been the first one in. And we're going to be really proud of, what we put together. So because I told him all that, after 6 or 8 months, and we're making money and we're closing deals, and he's kind of like, hey, Mike, what about that whole hiring people thing? So I was like,
accountability burn.
Shit, man. It's like, yeah, you're right. We do have to do this. So I didn't want to let him down, and so that kind of motivated me to like, it's time, what, we do have more work to keep up with again. We started interviewing people, and we found this girl, Sam, who has been with us 7 or 8 months now. She's also doing awesome. She's off to a really great start. And so she's now been with us, like I said, for about half of the year. And then at that point, we again had more work than we can really keep up with. So I would spend a little bit of time, an hour or two a week, just recruiting for internal. Send out some emails to people who looked like they could maybe do this job. And I found our most recent hire, his name's Travis, and he's been with us for 3 or 4 weeks now. So it happened organically. It happened through having the work to be able to support it, and just, our internal, like you said, accountability clock started ticking very loud. It's like, hey, this is great that we're doing good, but like, we're doing this thing, then let's do this thing.
That is awesome. Your 4 hires have been doing great. Like, what do you look for in a recruiter that you're just catching?
Yeah, we have to be selective right now, especially with our first few in the door. And if you're not, it's going to require a lot more management and training, and, hopefully try to train them up, or if it's not working out, having those hard conversations, because obviously this job is not for everyone. And that's just something that I'm trying to avoid as much as possible right now, because I have a hot desk that I'm trying to keep up with and train these people. So what I look for is, first thing is, I try to be very transparent in the interview process. Who we are for, be who we are not for. Actually, we interviewed a guy recently that I thought could be I know he can do the job of a recruiter, but it turned out he's probably not going to be perfect for us. Because who we are for is people who want to work really hard, who are not afraid to make cold calls, to do it in person, because we have a lot of in-person training and just culture to what we do. We try to make it fun and in-person and exciting. And who want to make a ton of money, because we have a really good comp plan where we're sharing, for example, this guy who I was telling you is not going to be a match for us. He was intrigued by us because he's probably going to make 40 or 50% more per year. A huge, huge raise. But it turned out he's not for us because he's got 6 weeks of vacation right now. And for us, we do 2 weeks and then the week of Christmas off. So total of 3. And this guy had 3 years of experience. He was off to a good start in recruiting. He was with another agency. But the most important thing for him was time away from work. And we have a team of people who the most important thing for us is learning, growing, earning a ton of money, and trying to make this company grow and be a fun place to be. So we can't be all things to all people. We can be true to who we are and try to be the best in the world at it. And what I'm looking for in people is people who, when I share that with them, get excited by it and not who are afraid by it. So that's what we're doing.
I love that you're probably a little more transparent in the process than I feel like a lot of other places. So you've done a good job explaining everything that's going on, explaining the culture, talking about the culture. And because of that, I think that's also helping filter out the wrong people.
I think so. And, it's nothing against them, of course. Everyone is different. And it's, there's better places for that guy to go work that will align better with what his values are. And so, I try to just be really honest. And I know it's not always the most in vogue thing to say, you can't work from home. Yeah, you're going to work really hard and make a bunch of cold calls. But there are some people out there like myself and the people who we've hired so far that's what, gets their rocks off. They want to go and make a ton of money, and they're not, turned off by the fact of we're going to have an in-person culture and work hard. And because of that, and because of all the effort they're putting in, I'm going to make sure that they are financially rewarded for their efforts above and beyond what's, usually out there in the marketplace.
Awesome. And so I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about business development. I want to talk about getting new clients. Literally 2 years of you starting your business, $2.5 million in placement fees. What is working when it comes to sales?
I think that what we believe in is a mix of old school and new school when it comes to business development. Old school meaning where we start is making outbound cold NPC calls. It'd be really consistent. I mean, you got to try and do them, even me who has a hot desk, I try to do them every week. And if you're new, you should really be doing them every day, at least every other day or every 2-3 days, right? So even if you have a bunch of jobs to recruit for, you got to do continuous business development, get your MPCs out to market. Now, with that said, we also believe in the new school. And for me, that is digital marketing. And I've had a ton of success through doing things just like this, a podcast that you can then put on LinkedIn, post it, and then start to get some awareness of you and your brand in your niche. So I post frequently. I really study what is going to seem like a post that is authentic and transparent and hopefully attractive. And I've won a lot of business through that. I've had companies cold call me and say, I saw your post. We have this job. We'd love for you to work on it. It's an amazing paradigm shift. And so, yeah, blending those two together has kind of been the key to our success there.
So, and I want to talk about this because I was actually just speaking at a conference this week, and I was actually, one of my slides was some of your LinkedIn posts.
Oh, no way. Thank you so much.
Like, I know like so often people are using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT to share content. And I feel like we're past that. People can see through it. You've done such a good job storylining and sharing, and it feels authentic. But then on a back end, it has like a business hit. Like, how are you writing your LinkedIn post? How are you thinking about this? And how are you sharing it? Because it's brought you tens of thousands of dollars of placements or hundreds of thousands of dollars of placements.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate you saying that and noticing that because it's intentional. So I try to write posts that, like you said, are authentic and truthful, but I always in the back of my mind want the sub-narrative to be, I am an elite recruiter in this space and you should work with us. And you can't just say that over and over or else it's boring. And in fact, people do basically say that when they're posting, hey, we're recruiting for this job, please apply. That's not that compelling of a narrative. And I think what this goes to is people might say, hey, posting on LinkedIn has worked so well for you and the people that do it. It would be foolish. Like, why is not everyone doing it? And because they're not, right? So like, why aren't they? The reason why people aren't doing it is because people are afraid to be made fun of online. That's what I think. I think if you post and no one likes it, that's pretty embarrassing. You post and you say you get 0 likes, right? That would suck. Or if you post something and everyone's ganging up on you and saying, you're wrong, I don't believe in that. There's kind of a fear level to doing this. And so because of that, people post anyways, but they post the most milquetoast, lame, not saying anything, boring content that is posted by, created by ChatGPT, or is just the same thing over and over of, we need to support the out-of-work people of the world. Of course we do, but that's what everyone is saying all the time. So it doesn't capture people's attention. So I think what I try to do is I try to be honest and truthful to myself and things that we believe in that might be compelling in some way that's different from the crowd. Like what we're talking about, we're a place where people make a ton of cold calls and that's messy. Sometimes we get hung up on, and posting that, people find it interesting usually is, or being in person. You mentioned going in person. Like you said, not a lot of people are doing that. So we make a point to call that out. Like, we're all about being in person with our clients, and this is the wins that we've got from it. And you know what? Some people post on there, comment, you're wrong. We do everything from Zoom, and it's better, and that's okay. I'm okay to have a disagreement. It's not like I'm a bad person because we believe in a different thing than you. So that's kind of my strategy.
And I want to kind of like chime one more thing, a question about your strategy. So I do see you have a lot of recruiters like commenting and liking, I'm one of them, but I went through your connections and I think this is something that a lot of people are missing out when it comes to LinkedIn content. Yes, you are connected with a lot of recruiters, but you're also connected with a lot of people within your space. You're sharing it for them. And I think that a lot of times us recruiters, like we're sharing posts for other recruiters. Like you're primarily building out like an omnipresent network on top of the cold calls, on top of the emails for your industry.
Yeah. So you could technically criticize what I'm doing in that way of like, well, the number one rule of marketing is speak to your audience. So if I'm saying this weird recruiting thing happened, why should a plant manager, who's my ultimate target hiring manager, care? But I actually think that's kind of antiquated wisdom at this point because of the way that things like a LinkedIn algorithm works. If I post something that is very intriguing to recruiters and it gets hundreds or thousands of likes, LinkedIn then starts showing that to more and more and more of my network because they're like, this is a hot post. People might want to see this. And then all of a sudden, the guy who is the hiring manager sees it. And no, it doesn't speak necessarily to him, but he is then aware of me, sees me, gets his eyeballs on me. Maybe he clicks on my page and it talks about everything that we do there, goes on my website, and then maybe will reach out to me. If nothing else, even if he doesn't do that, he sees me, he sees I have a post that has some virality to it, and that's a positive light to be seen on through your client's eyes. You want to be seen as a guy who is a person in business and has connections and likes, and people just think it's cool, right? So,
I mean, the algorithm makes you an expert.
Yeah, I know, right? So they say.
I mean, it's one of the things, like, I really believe in, kind of what you're doing is building this brand because the perception of your expertise really gets highlighted in the brand. But yeah, so good job on that. I wanted to make sure that I could highlight that for the listeners out there because you do such a great job with that. I have another question for you. You've had a life change recently. How are you juggling building a business, making placements, hiring people, working with your team with a brand new baby?
Yeah. It's awesome. It's the best. I have a 6-month-old daughter at home, and I just, it changes you for the better in so many unexpected ways. But it is hard to juggle these things. Basically what you end up living with is a lot of guilt. It's like if you're at work, you're like, I'm missing out on this time. I miss my family. When you're with your family, you're like, business needs me. What am I going to do? I can't let, my team down. So that part is hard. But what I go back to and what helps me through those times is I had very clear and open communication with my wife and agreed on what we wanted our life to look like before we went on this journey. And she grew up where her mom didn't work, but her dad traveled for work. I grew up where my mom didn't work, stayed home with me and my brothers, and my dad worked a lot. And we just kind of said, like, we want that for us too. I don't want her to have to work. And that means I'll probably have to work harder and more. And then also, you have to almost be a little selfish as far as what do you want personally out of your career and your life? Because if I punt on my career, that means so much to me because I want to be home more. And then I resent everyone for that. That's not good for anyone. It's not good for me. It's not good for my wife. It's not good for my kids, right? So we really sat down and said, what do we want to do? And we said, well, what we're going to do is have my wife stay home and like you go to work every day and, try to be at home as much as you can. But, we understand that you have a job and a career, and hopefully someday after 5 or 10 years when the business has grown and maybe you have a team of 20 or 30 or 50 people, you can take the foot off the gas. And at that point, you'll only have a 5-year-old. And if we're blessed enough to have more, a 3-year-old and we want to have more kids. So we'll be, in good shape relatively early. So I'm sucking it up now, feeling the pain and missing out on, unfortunately, sometimes to be able to hopefully support our family better in the future.
Well, I love that one thing that you really just hit on. You guys came together with a common goal. And you guys are working together for the common goal. You guys are just working different parts of the different pieces of the puzzle. So I think it sounds like there's something that you guys are doing great on. And it was probably also because you're great at other places, but a strong communication with your partner.
Thank you. And yeah, it doesn't mean that it's not hard. Of course it's hard. But it's just what we agreed that we wanted. And now that we're doing it, we see the light at the end of the tunnel of this is what we've always wanted. And so, yeah, and I'm really, really, really fortunate that my wife is the way that she is, and she wants to be a mom. Other thing that we had going for us was she didn't really love her career. She had more of a job than a career, so she was happy, fine stepping away from it. And she enjoys being a mom more than kind of the, day-to-day job that she had. So we're just working our plan. There's no magic elixir to make it not suck to walk out the door in the morning and, when you kiss your baby goodbye, it just kind of is what it is.
And what I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself, the wife also becomes part of the business and a key part of it pretty soon. But I got a almost 4-month-old at home, so I understand the chaos.
Oh man, you're doing the same thing. So yeah, are you kind of experience the same thing, trying to balance work and family?
It is, and there is time where I walk off during the day, and so that way she can make sure she's getting things done and all this other stuff. And one of the things I didn't realize is how tough it is to get into childcare here in the U.S. That's a whole nother story for another day.
Are you sleeping? Are you getting any sleep?
Don't hate me. I get lots of sleep.
You're lucky, man. That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm knocking on wood. I'm going to pay for saying this now.
No, that's good. And that's we were really struggling with sleep.
There were days where before it flipped, I literally at my desk making calls, and there'd be a few days I'd pick up the phone, make the call, and I'm like, who did I just call?
That's an right. Yeah, you start dropping things and misbuttoning your shirt up different directions.
Yeah. Well, jumping back to anything, is there anything else you'd love to share before we jump to the next part of the podcast?
No, this is, that was kind of everything.
Awesome. So quick fire questions, and they don't have to be quick answers. And this first question, I absolutely love it because you're dealing with this right now. What advice would you give to a recruiter that's just getting started in our industry in 2024?
Come in, work really hard, try to learn as much as you can. Really, the learning part is a huge, huge aspect of this. So trying to figure out a podcast like this one, go and listen to other people who are doing what you want to do and learn from it. Seek out books on sales. Look at books that recruiters have written and just study your craft, because no one is an expert in their first year. It takes time. You have to have your 10,000 hours in before you become an expert, and you're going to get there faster if you get a lot of reps in, and that's the hard work part, and try to make them as quality of reps as possible, and that's the study and learning.
Same question, but for experienced recruiters. What would you tell them that, the recruiters that have been around 5, 10, 20, 30 years? What advice would you give to them to see success?
I think if they're asking that question at that stage, that's a really good sign. If you have, a decade of experience in recruiting and you're still saying, how do I get better at this? They probably are going to find the answer. So it's having that mindset of beginner's mind, learning and trying to always start from the beginning and reprocess engineer it to become better and better and better. I would say, iron sharpens iron. Try to get yourself around other people who are really good at this. And don't ever think that you know everything. You always have to be humble enough to try something new that maybe will make you better.
That's awesome. Has there been a huge book that has had a huge impact on your career?
There's been a lot. So one thing that helped me was I went to school for English, which didn't really teach me many commercial abilities, but it taught me how to read and learn things and apply them to your life. So I'm big on this type of stuff. There was a few. One of them is, our company's called Carnegie Search, and the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is the reason for that. Because that was a turning point in my life. I just read it, and I not only learned things from the book, I learned, because I read it early on in my career, I learned that you could learn things and get better at your job at them, which is not something you really taught in school. It was kind of a turning point. I was like, there's probably a million books about everything that I've ever needed to learn. And so that was a huge one. Another huge one was Danny Cahill, who is this, amazing recruiter. He wrote 2 books that I read. that I, read multiple times and learned a ton from. This guy, Greg Savage, who is an amazing recruiter in Australia, wrote this book called The Savage Truth, and reading that a couple times. So like industry, trade publications kind of stuff are really good.
Fantabulous. And you mentioned a second ago that iron sharpens iron. Yeah. I know that you're actively involved in some like elite groups. You're actively working with other high headhunters. Talk about how being around these like great mentors and great coaches and other great recruiters has impacted your career and business.
Yeah. So, even just last night, I went out to dinner with this guy who has sold staffing firms. He's a mentor relationship to me. Executive leadership of some of the biggest staffing firms in the world that certainly the name of. And I just met him, through being in recruiting, and we kind of hit it off. And then I just stayed in touch with him and little questions along the way, because I could tell right off the bat he was a guy who was generous with his time. And when I had a question that was a good question, like not how do you pick up clients? It was more like, hey, we have this specific issue that I don't know what to do. I've never came across this. It's like something to do with our bookkeeping, or something to do with our training, or something to do with, a retained deal that's going wrong, or like something that's very specific that shows that you're not just asking someone to do the work for you, shows that you've done the work. You've just gotten into like a really hard situation. I would ask him those things, and he would take my call, and he would answer the questions, because I think he sort of respected, like, oh yeah, I remember 30 years ago and the first time I was up against that. And so it helps in every way, because you're not going to know what you don't know. Right. So it's kind of like if you were a golfer and you suck at golf and you're like, I'm just going to keep playing 18 holes over and over and over and over until I get better. You'll get a little better just through brute force. But if you go take a golf lesson, you're going to get much better way quicker. So it's that same idea.
Love that. Now, when it comes to, you see a lot of recruiters, you probably talk to a lot of recruiters. You have lots of recruiters liking your posts. What do you think has been a huge driver for your own personal success?
Well, I think that it just really depends what you want to do with your career and your life. So success could be defined a lot of different ways. I think there's some people who are super successful in life who are not successful in business. So I have, friends from high school that we've all taken different paths in life, right? I love my friends. They're doing different things than me, though. One of them is a musician. He's going to live in Portugal for a year. He's going to wait tables. And you know what? He's living the exact life he wants to live. He's not rich, but that doesn't matter anything to him. He's writing music and playing concerts, and he's meeting other musicians, and he's living in Europe, and he's just like living the exact life he intends to live. So I think first thing is it depends how you define success. Then the second thing is if you have a plan of what you want, just relentlessly going after it until you get it. So that's kind of what I'm living through now is, for whatever reason, I had big dreams. I wanted to, it wasn't just have, a good desk. It was like grow a business. And the last thing I'll say about this topic is, for me, it's what I believe is why I was put here, right? Like, this is what I believe is why I exist in this world. For some reason, I was fortunate enough to be good at this thing of recruiting. I don't know exactly why. It's just some combination of my DNA, genetics, and life experience and nature and nurture made me good at this, right? So now I think it's my duty and responsibility in a way to be as good as I can at it, give back as much as possible, help as many people into new jobs as possible, get as many people into new careers as possible, and get as many people into this industry of recruiting that maybe would be like the same experience I had, and train them up. This is what I kind of feel like my purpose in life is. And my goal is to go out and fulfill that purpose.
And on the same note, everything that you know now, the ups, the downs, the move, those months that you've like really doubted yourself too, the self-doubt creeping in. If you can go back to the very beginning of your recruiting career and have a cup of coffee with yourself, what advice would you sit down and give yourself?
I would tell myself to don't get too high when the things are going good, and don't get too low on yourself when the things are going bad. Try to see things in a bigger perspective. Just because you have one great month, you are not the best recruiter in the world. Just because you have one bad month doesn't mean you suck at this. But it's funny because there's a company in the news right now that's called NVIDIA, right? And they're a chip manufacturer, and their stock just went up the highest single gain of any stock in the history of the stock exchange. In fact, the delta from where they started the day and ended the day was equivalent to the market cap of Netflix. So they went up a Netflix worth, right? And I saw an interview with Jensen Eccles, who is the CEO of that company, and they asked him the same question: what would you say to yourself? And he said, his answer, I thought was really smart, was, if I had the opportunity to say to myself the truth, I probably wouldn't have actually done all this because it's too hard. If I knew how friggin' hard it was going to be, I would have probably just said, I'll get a regular job and do something else. So you have to go into it with a little bit of blissful ignorance and just blind faith in yourself, which I think is sort of the hallmark of an entrepreneurial person. Is, I know it's hard, but I'm pretty good at this. I'll figure it out. Maybe you will, and maybe you won't, but it's going to suck at certain times. So maybe it's best that we don't know what the future holds.
I absolutely love that. I'm going to ask you like one more tactical question before I let you go. What does a day look like of a top biller yourself?
My days right now are a little different than the day of a top biller, I think, because I'm really serving in this role of sales manager, billing manager. And in particular, the last 3 weeks, we have a new hire. So I'm doing a lot of calling with him attached to a different set of headphones that's on mute, and just have him listen to my calls. So I'll do training. So right now, my day is more about training until I get this guy up to speed. But what my life will hopefully again look like is serving the role of a top biller after he's trained. And there's always little questions, but I usually will come in, check my emails. I need to be somewhat planned for the day in advance, or else I'm shot. So hopefully going back even to the previous day, starting at 4:30 or 5, because we leave at 5:30, I'll have half hour or 60 minutes of getting my profiles that I want to call lined up, my numbers lined up. And then what we do is we work in batches of 20 calls. So make 20 calls, dials. Usually in those 20 calls, you get 2 people, if you're lucky, to answer, and the rest are voicemails. And then after those 20 calls, take a break, get a coffee, talk to your coworker, send out your emails, whatever. Boom, another 20 calls. And we try to get 4 or 5 of those done in a day. Now, when you're brand new, you should be doing 4 or 5 batches of 20 every day, simply because your calls aren't that good. So most people aren't going to, even if they do answer, talk to you. But for me, once you become someone who has a desk of repeat business, I don't have to make 100 calls a day anymore. I make more like 40 to 60 a day, because people who I call answer. It's like, they know my number. I've called them before, or I was talking to a client. I get them on the phone and we're talking. So I don't have time to make 80 more outbound calls. So yeah, it's talking to your candidates who are in the pipeline, talking to your clients who are doing business with you, your previous clients. What do you have going? Can we meet up again? Can we take you out to lunch? Is there a new business that's coming our way? Hey, probably next quarter. Boom, hit that on our calendar for next quarter. That's set up for that. And just trying to stay on the phone as much as possible is key.
Awesome. Well, Mike, before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
Just thank you so much for having me on. This has been fun. I really enjoyed the conversation. Those are great questions, made me think, and I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Awesome. And for the listeners, how can they follow you?
I'm Mike Williams on LinkedIn, and it should come up if you type that in. If it doesn't come up, you type in Mike Williams Recruiter or Mike Williams Carnegie Search. It will come up, and I'll connect with you.
Awesome. Man, I'm so excited that you shared. Like I said, I ran across you on LinkedIn. I really love how you've started structuring your posts. And, because of that, I started digging into your story a little more. So super excited for the listeners that they got to hear this, see this. And I really hope that this is going to make somebody and help somebody dream bigger. So for the listeners, I know 2024 is going to be your best year yet. So let's make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.